morning, everyone. Today we're joined by Christoph Richter, Figment newly appointed head of business development for the Middle East. Figment, widely recognized as the leading independent provider of institutional staking infrastructure, has just deepened its presence in the region through a strategic partnership with UAE-based custody provider Tungsten. He's here to share why Figment chose the UAE as its entry point, how this partnership with Tungsten fits into their vision, and what institutional staking could mean for banks, fund, family offices across the region. Good morning, Christoph.
Hi, Walid. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So, what made the UAE the right market for Figment to step into now? Was the regulatory clarity, the access to capital, or combination of many factors?
Absolutely. I think you really picked up there on two of the main factors. The UAE has got among the most developed digital asset frameworks in the world, particularly in ADGM with VARA and the DIFC. Being the capital of capital is Abu Dhabi's main line these days, and I think it's very true. It speaks for itself. A lot of the institutional and large asset managers have relocated to ADGM in recent months and years. The total assets under management that are in ADGM have increased by more than 200% in 2024 alone. And we also see a wider pool of other players relocating to the UAE. So, for example, Deribit, OKX, and Binance, they all have VARA licenses based in Dubai World Trade Center, which is another key hub. And we also see a large amount of crypto funds and asset managers relocating to the region. And all of this comes together with the fact that the crypto adoption across the board, also including the retail investors, is very strong here in the UAE. So there's an awareness of digital asset that filters all the way from the top, from the government down to the retail investors, and sees many institutional
So the taxi driver, if I would interrupt you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. How did this partnership with Tungsten shape this move? Does it go beyond infrastructure into market positioning and trust building?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, here locally, it's very important to have a strong local partner. Tungsten is the largest local custodian for digital assets. They're part of the Further Ventures network, which is a very strong network of innovative companies really across different technology sectors, but particularly in the digital asset space. Tungsten has recently also been acquired by Zodia, which is a larger player, again, with a very strong local presence. So we are very excited about this partnership, and it's been a great way of working together. When you sort of follow the institutional journey, you really have two key questions. The first question is, how do you safe keep your digital assets? For that, you need the custodian. And then the other question is, well, now that I found somewhere to safe keep my assets, how do I generate a return or a reward? And this is where Figment comes into play.
Is Figment here because regional institutions were already asking for staking solution, or it is more of a proactive move to create that demand?
We have a number of clients in the region. We are in a lot of discussions, and that number of clients is likely to increase in short order. The interesting piece here about Figment is that we have a lot of international clients that are very well known. There's a lot of large institutional players that already work with Figment. And I think this is very important here for the local region, right? They would like to see that proof that when a company is setting up over here, that they actually have traction and live working relationships with other large institutional investors abroad.
Okay. Do you intend to go for a full license in the UAE, or are you operating under a different model for it?
So staking is an interesting one because we are software providers, right? We are not a regulated financial entity in general. What we really do is we facilitate the infrastructure and the uh, basically end-to-end staking experience for our clients. But because we never take custody over anybody's funds, it's non-custodial, strictly speaking, what Figment does. We are actually not required to be licensed as such. We are a software provider. The business model, if you wish, is staking as a service. And we really make that journey very easy. And this is also an interesting one here for the UAE because it doesn't come with the requirement of having a local license.
Interesting. Uh, so staking is a deeply technical process, kind of. So how do you translate that into something private bank, family offices, or even sovereign fund can see as an allocation strategy?
Yeah, it's a great question, Walid. I think the staking is really misunderstood. So I would really love to like take it one step back, if I may, and kind of like talk about what staking actually is. Many players in the market have branded staking for products that are actually lending products, and that's not true at all. Staking and lending are two completely different activities, and they have nothing to do with each other. Staking is the process of validating transactions on a proof of stake blockchain, right? And if we then roll it back even further, so what is the blockchain? It's a public ledger where you can independently verify transactions without having a trusted intermediary like a bank. And then the question is, okay, so how do you secure that network? And there's two ways of securing the network: is proof of work and proof of stake. Proof of work is best known from the Bitcoin blockchain, where you have, the cryptographic puzzles that you're solving and you're rewarded a new block of Bitcoin, extremely energy intensive. And then you have the sort of version 2.0 of that, which is proof of stake, a lot more energy efficient. And you're locking up your tokens for validating transactions on the blockchain. And in return for that, you're receiving a reward. So very important. It's a reward for work performed. It's not a yield. It's not interest. And this process of verifying transactions on the blockchain is reasonably complex, right? And the technical ins and out range from server infrastructure to understanding the network, running the protocol, avoiding slashing, all these things. And for investors, it's simply too complex, right? So this is where somebody like Figment comes in and has that technical edge and provides the end-to-end journey, if you wish, package holiday for the investor and saying, look, we can do this for you, right? You keep custody over your assets. And all we do is we work on a profit sharing model. And this is typically always a great way for any business to operate because it aligns interests, right? So any business model where you have a strong alignment of interests in between your clients and the core business tends to work well. And then we are also among the market leaders of achieving the highest rewards for the different blockchains, and we support more than 40 networks. So there's also a very broad spectrum of blockchains supported. So to come back to your original question around why would a family office or a local sovereign wealth fund consider to do that is really build or buy, right? Do they want to build those capabilities internally? They need to hire the talent, they need to run the server infrastructure, they need to get their head around. It can be very time intensive, particularly if they have more than one or two networks, they have multiple networks. Or they can just outsource this, go to the experts in the market, and basically on a revenue sharing model or profit sharing model, effectively pay away a small percentage of the overall reward for having the end-to-end journey.
So interesting. And before we started the recording. You're trying to frame it well. It's not the yield. It's not the interest. It is a reward. This will bring me the question about Islamic finance and
Yes.
how how they classify what is Sharia compliant or not. So do you consider staking as a Sharia compliant product?
So at this point in time, there are very limited articles about this topic. It's something that also we are working on internally in further, becoming thought leaders in that field. I started working with Islamic finance all the way back in 2007 during my investment banking days.
Mhm.
So I've come across a couple of Islamic finance structures over the years, I dare to say, the basic principles comply with Islamic finance. But then for it to be Sharia compliant, it needs to be approved by a Sharia board. And that second step has not happened yet.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the full transparency here. So why do I say staking is in line with Islamic finance? As you rightly picked up on the point, it is not interest, not riba, right? You get paid for the work that you carry out. It is also not a fixed percentage, right? So whenever
Yeah.
there's like a, it fluctuates according to the market, right?
And the fact that you're charging like it's profit sharing as
Correct.
well, it's another element. So it's
Absolutely.
yeah.
So these are really three key elements. No fixed return. It is, a reward for work performed, and you have a profit sharing model with a client. Those three things are absolutely key in any kind of Islamic finance transaction.
It doesn't depend as well on the supplier. Like as a supplier, as a service provider, you're just trying to offer the service, but the reward, let me say, or the yield or whatever we call it. So it is up to the network itself, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. The reward typically is split into different parts. There's like effectively network inflation. So similar to fiat currencies that experience inflation, also proof of stake networks typically have an inflation rate. An inflation rate is a lot lower than what we experience in fiat. But for example, if you take Solana, you do have a 4.5% inflation rate annualized. Then the second part is really about if you wish, the outperformance, right, where you then get paid for the MEV, the tips effectively, and then the block rewards. So there's three components to the reward structure. And this is where it's important to have a very good staking provider, because that staking provider then can maximize these other components
Yeah.
and allow you to generate the highest reward on your collateral.
Yeah. So how do you address the concern the like investor may have about slashing custody and regulatory risk when pitching staking to more traditional financial players?
Yeah. So really, it breaks down into two
And
things.
you can talk about slashing the way you as well clarified
Yeah.
the reward part.
Yeah. So I think the most common slashing incident that people focus on is the risk of double signing, right? So where one transaction gets signed off twice, and this is really something that all blockchains avoid. And again, if we roll back here a little bit, the reason Bitcoin became so big, for example, was that it solved that double spend problem.
Yeah.
It was no longer possible to spend the same coin twice
Yeah.
because everything was recorded on the blockchain, right? So any proof of stake blockchain will also highly focus on avoiding any transaction being signed off twice. So there's a lot of awareness around compliance at Figment, and which is frankly one of the reasons also why I joined, because it's unusual to find that level of duty and care in the digital asset industry. It feels a lot more like a traditional finance company, the way that it's run. Compliance first, safety over liveness. If there is even a risk of a double signing transaction, the servers are being switched off. We're exactly trying to understand what has happened. And to date, Figment has never been subject to any slashing event. It's also
Yes.
important to mention that slashing is live on the Ethereum blockchain, but it has not been, for example, activated yet in Solana.
Yeah.
So it's less of a concern there. And the other thing to mention when you talk about safety and compliance is that Figment prides itself in using only OFAC compliant relays, meaning that only OFAC compliant transactions are actually validated by the validators, right? So this whole compliance angle is extremely important for institutional investors. And this is also one of the reasons why so many institutional investors are using Figment.
Cool. So being in the UAE, to serve, let's say you choose to be in the UAE to serve UAE-based client, or you see the UAE as a hub to expand across Saudi, Qatar, and wider MENA region?
Yeah, I think it's really both. The UAE is the natural starting point at the moment in digital assets, particularly, of course, Dubai and Abu Dhabi, right? This is really the key Emirates here. There is a huge hope and developing story around Saudi, of course, but it's still very early. To this
Yeah.
point in time, company has
We're
received.
crossing our finger, all of us.
Exactly. No company has received yet a license in Saudi Arabia to legally deal or hold cryptocurrency. It has been more a private wealth family office fund phenomenon on
Yeah.
their side, right?
Yeah.
But that's certainly something that is going to change in the next 12 to 18 months, right? And Qatar is slowly but surely moving as well towards becoming more centric on digital assets. The other interesting one is certainly Bahrain.
Sure.
And also part of my purview is Turkey. And it's a very interesting one because Turkey,
It's a big
it,
market.
it's a big market and it also explains how digital assets can be used in very different ways.
Yeah.
Here in
I'm
the
Lebanese,
US,
remember, huh? So I do understand
yeah,
where it's coming from.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So here in the UAE, it can be seen as a portfolio diversifier, as some way of maximizing your Sharpe ratio, of, obviously being part of a new technology.
It's a life saving in Turkey and Lebanon.
Exactly. It is a very different story. I remember when the Turkish lira was at 180 to the euro back in 2012, 13, and then we went now to almost 50 to 1. You have a 98% devaluation of the currency in the space of just over 10 years. And Lebanon, Egypt, similar stories, right? And you have to somehow protect your wealth. You have to protect your savings, and it's not like you can trust the local banks. Less so in Turkey, where I think it's more of a stronger infrastructure, but particularly in Lebanon, in
Yeah.
your example, right, it's very tough, right? And again, in Argentina, you'll have the same kind of story. So we're very excited about the Turkish market. The crypto adoption is huge. Regulation has come there a long way in recent months, so it's very interesting from that perspective. And I think what I would say, what the Turkish government has done well is that they have kept their own banks, the local players involved, right? So in many other markets, you will see that the global players that are everywhere also take the crown in the local markets. And I think Turkey is a little bit different there, where the government has recognized the need for digital assets and actually now is sort of like followed a little bit, maybe even the path of the US, right? Where they say, well, let's get the Turkish banks involved.
Yeah.
Let's make it necessary for you to have a Turkish.
Helping them now.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this is very interesting now, this development.
Yeah. So before concluding, and specifically your role as developing the business in the region, so what does success for Figment in MENA look like in a year time?
Yeah. It's really about having the right conversations. We're here to educate. We're here to understand the needs of the local investors. We're here to understand how we can tweak and change our own offering to be more suitable to the local region. I believe that many foreigners that relocate to the UAE come here with the mindset of, making a quick buck, and this could not be further away from the truth. It's about playing the long game, and when you play the long game, the best way to do it is by doing education. So, for example, that whole Islamic finance piece.
This was my last question, by the way. Now
Yeah.
I'm giving you the floor. So go ahead.
Yeah. That Islamic finance piece, you asked some great questions about that, right? And this is so important because people don't really connect the dots in between staking and Islamic finance, right? It is also very important, for example, to note that when Mubadala took a large Bitcoin position in the back end of last year, they chose to do so via the BlackRock ETF IBIT. They
Yeah,
did not buy Bitcoin outright, but
yeah.
that may well change in the future, right? So
Has to change.
exactly. Once they hold the actual tokens on their balance sheet,
Yeah,
they will have to ask themselves, well, what do you do with it now, right? And the likes of First Abu Dhabi Bank, Emirates NBD, together with Aqua now, right? So there's a lot of local players that have a huge amount of clients, strong balance sheets entering into this field, and staking after custody is really your number two priority because it is the safest way of earning a reward on your collateral. And we
Maybe,
as
maybe I'll put it before Christoph, because the whole idea of acquiring the asset, you should be able to, you should have a plan to what to do next with
yes,
the asset, right? So yes, the custody is a must, but somehow you have a plan already that you will be looking after this reward later on, right?
absolutely. Yeah, it's a very fair point, Walid. And I think for us, we want to have the right conversations. We want to speak to the big institutional investors, but also the family offices. The private wealth here in the region, of course, is very strong. And understand how can we do it for you? How can it be very simple? We have, for example, the Figment app, which allows you click to stake, where you connect your wallet and you can be staking your assets within a minute, literally. And also, as I mentioned to you just before we started the recording, equally now with the integration of Figment to, for example, MetaMask or Ledger Live, which are very popular more with the smaller investors, there's a very broad spectrum now that is effectively covered by Figment, and we're very excited for the journey ahead, you know. And I think for us, we've been in staking now since 2018, so it's been a few years, and it's a long-term vision here that we hold for both the region and the overall industry.
Perfect. Christoph, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Walid. It's
We'll
really
be
great to
looking
be on here.
forward to meet in person.
Absolutely.